Welcome to Karen's HOA Nightmares. Get ready for the most outrageous, shocking, and downright hilarious tales from the world of homeowners associations. In today's story, Alex Baxter, a 35-year-old agricultural consultant, never expected to clash with the Sunset Hills Homeowners Association, HOA. When Olive Williams, the HOA president, tried to claim authority over his ranch office and land, the battle quickly escalated. What started with false accusations and absurd violations soon led to Olive facing criminal charges, being removed from her position, and a community united against her. In the end, Alex turned the disputed land into Freedom Park, a symbol of justice and community. What Olive sought to control, Alex transformed into a place of peace, and the saga of HOA madness was far from over. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest hot stories. Leave now. I'm the president of the HOA, and this property belongs to me now. Margaret Williams screamed at me in my own ranch office. Without hesitation, she called 911 accusing me of trespassing. When the police arrived, she told them that she had authority over all properties within 100 meters. While she was going on about her jurisdiction over my office, she had no idea what else I owned. The truth would completely shatter everything she thought she knew. Have you ever dealt with unreasonable HOA members? Because this woman was about to learn a very costly lesson. I'm Alex Baxter, 35 years old, the owner of a small agricultural consulting business, and I was just sitting in my ranch office on what should have been a typical Tuesday morning. I was having an important video conference with a client from Texas about a cattle breeding program. Behind me on the wall were photos of the quarter horses I had trained over the years. And out of my window, you could see my entire property stretching out, which, as it turned out, would be quite important later. The morning sun bathed the paddocks in golden light when, suddenly, the peace was interrupted by the sound of police sirens. Not just one siren, but multiple, growing louder until the flashing red and blue lights bounced off my office windows like a neon nightmare. My client, Mr. Johnson from Dallas, raised an eyebrow. "Alex, what's going on over there? Are you getting arrested or something?" he asked, half joking but clearly concerned about our meeting. "I honestly have no idea, Mr. Johnson. Let me check it out quickly," I replied, trying to stay composed while my mind raced with possibilities. Was there an accident, a fire? But I could never have predicted what was really happening. Through my office window, I could see 2 police cruisers parked in front of my building with sirens still blaring. And there she was, standing in the middle of my driveway, flailing her arms like some kind of conductor of chaos. Margaret Williams, the newly elected president of the Sunset Hills HOA, which was located about half a mile from my ranch. She was 65, retired from her position as an elementary school principal, and apparently, she couldn't let go of bossing people around. Her gray hair was pulled into a tight bun, her thick glasses made her eyes appear exaggerated, and her face was flushed red with what looked like righteous indignation. She wore a black blazer with shoulder pads straight out of the 1980s, wildly gesturing at my office while yelling at the officers. "This man is trespassing on HOA property. He's illegally occupying our community ranch office and refuses to leave, despite several warnings. I have reason to believe he might be armed and dangerous." The officers knocked at my door, their presence now growing even more surreal. I excused myself from the call with Mr. Johnson, who was now watching the unfolding drama through our video connection, probably more entertained than concerned about the actual meeting. I opened the door to find Officer Rodriguez, a young cop who looked like he had better places to be than dealing with what was quickly shaping up to be another HOA circus. "Mr. Baxter, we received a 911 call about someone illegally occupying this building, possibly armed. Can you explain what's going on?" His tone was professional, but I could tell he was already exhausted by the nonsense. "Officer, I'm as confused as you are," I responded calmly. "This is my ranch office on my property, which I've owned since 2019. I'm in the middle of a business meeting and I'm certainly not armed. I have no idea what Mrs. Williams is talking about." That's when Margaret stormed past the officers, her voice rising in fury. "Don't believe his lies. I'm the president of the Sunset Hills HOA. This entire area is under our jurisdiction. This man is occupying community property without authorization. I demand you remove him immediately." Officer Rodriguez sighed deeply, clearly dealing with her antics too often. "Ma'am, do you have any documentation proving this is HOA property? And can you specify what weapon you saw?" Olive flailed her arms wildly. "I don't need documentation. I'm the president. I have supreme authority over all properties within 100 meters of the residential zone. And he has horses, dangerous horses. I couldn't help but chuckle at that, which only seemed to make her more furious. Officer, here's my property deed, I said, pulling out my phone and accessing my cloud storage to show the legal documents. I own this ranch, including this office. I purchased it from the Henderson family 5 years ago, long before Sunset Hills even existed. Officer Rodriguez took a moment to check the documents, then called dispatch to confirm the property records. A few minutes later, he turned back to Olive with a tired expression. Dispatch confirms this property is registered as commercial agricultural under Alex Baxter's name. Ma'am, this is clearly his property. There's no crime here, and you cannot misuse emergency services for civil disputes. Consider this a formal warning. Olive stood there, her mouth flapping open and closed, unable to comprehend the reality. A few neighbors who had gathered nearby were now openly recording the scene with their phones. Did she really call 911 over property she doesn't even own? Someone whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. I decided to drive the point home by grabbing a survey map and spreading it out on the hood of the police car for everyone to see. As you can see here, I pointed to the clearly marked boundaries. My ranch is zoned as commercial agricultural, and it's completely separate from the residential HOA zone. Olive's face cycled through shades of red and white as she sputtered. This isn't over, Baxter. I know the law, and I'll prove that everything within 100 meters is ours. The officers, clearly done with this circus, began walking back to their cruisers. Ma'am, Officer Rodriguez called out, I suggest you stop wasting emergency resources. As Olive was escorted off my property, she turned back, her eyes full of venom. You'll regret this, Baxter. You'll see what real power looks like. I returned to my office, unmuted the call with Mr. Johnson, who was grinning from ear to ear. Sorry about that interruption, I said with a grin. Apparently our new HOA president has a very enthusiastic interpretation of her authority. Johnson laughed. Alex, that was better than cable TV. I've dealt with some crazy HOA folks, but calling the cops on someone for owning their property? That's a new one. I finished the call, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Looking out at the 2,000 square meter undeveloped plot on my property, I couldn't help but wonder what Olive really wanted. This kind of crazy doesn't just come out of nowhere. But Olive didn't just want my office. She wanted something much, much bigger, and when I refused to sell it to her 3 months ago, that's when the real war began. The letter arrived on HOA letterhead, impressive with its formal language and utterly ridiculous in its content. Dear Neighboring Ranch, the Sunset Hills HOA requires you to register as a business member and pay monthly fees of $500 for the privilege of operating within our zone of influence. Furthermore, all livestock operations must comply with the 2024 HOA guidelines for aesthetic harmony. Jake Morrison, my 25-year-old ranch hand who helped with the horses, read it and burst out laughing. Boss, is this lady for real? The HOA wants to charge you rent for running your own ranch? What's next? A breathing tax for using their air? But Olive was just getting started. Over the next month, my mailbox overflowed with increasingly absurd violation notices. Week 1 brought equine vocalizations exceeding 65 dB, fined $200, because apparently my horses were neighing too enthusiastically. Week 2 escalated to aesthetic violation, unapproved barn color, fined $300, even though the barn had been painted that exact shade of red for 20 years. Week 3 hit new heights of ridiculousness, with all factory assault from livestock emissions exceeding acceptable parameters, fined $500, which was a fancy way of saying horses poop and it smells. Week 4 brought commercial vehicle loitering. Feed truck parked over 30 minutes, fined $400, because apparently delivering horse feed was now a crime. The total fines reached into the thousands, each notice more preposterous than the last. The direct confrontation came on a Friday evening around 7 as I was giving the horses their dinner. The sound of multiple cars pulling up made me look toward the gate where Olive had arrived with her full war council. Carol and 2 other HOA board members I'd seen around but never met. She was dressed like she was attending the Oscars, complete with red-bottom designer heels that immediately sank into the soft ground, though she seemed beyond caring about her shoes. Baxter, I need to speak with you immediately, she shouted across the paddock. I continued spreading the alfalfa hay, not bothering to turn around. I can hear you fine from there. Just keep your voice down so you don't spook the horses. This seemed to enrage her further. You need to comply with HOA regulations immediately. This isn't some backwater farm anymore. This is a civilized community. You're right about one thing, I said calmly, finally turning to face her. This isn't a backwater farm. It's a commercial agricultural operation that predates your HOA by 3 years. It's not in a residential zone, and it's certainly not under your jurisdiction. Carol spoke up timidly, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Williams, perhaps we should review the actual boundaries. Silence. Aggie roared with such force that Carol jumped. My horses snorted nervously, and even the 2 board members took a step back. I know the law. I've researched the law. Everything within 100 meters of residential property falls under HOA governance. This is established precedent. I decided to handle this with facts rather than emotions. Leading the group into my office, I pulled out the massive survey map from my fireproof filing cabinet, spreading it across my conference table under the bright lights. Please look at this official county survey map. The red line shows my ranch boundaries, zoned commercial agricultural. The blue line shows Sunset Hills, zoned residential. The distance between them is 50 meters of public land. There's no overlap, no gray area, no room for interpretation. Olive stared at the map, her face flushing even deeper. I don't care about your maps. I'll find a way. I'll show you what real power looks like. Before storming out, she paused at the window, overlooking my undeveloped land, her eyes gleaming with naked greed. All of this should belong to the community, to me. That night, after Olive and her entourage left, I made a decision that would prove crucial. I called Jake over. Jake, I want you to install a complete security camera system tomorrow. Full coverage, 16 high-definition cameras with night vision, motion detection, battery backup, the works. Jake looked at me with concern. You think she's going to do something crazy, boss? I don't think, Jake. I know, I replied, gazing out at the undeveloped plot of land where I often stood to watch sunsets and plan for the future, and I have a feeling she's going to do something incredibly stupid involving that piece of land. That night, my security cameras caught something that made my blood run cold. Olive wasn't alone. And what they did to my ranch. Have you ever seen someone fake an injury for insurance fraud? Comment yes if you know where this is going, because what happened next got me sued for assault I never committed. The fog was thick as pea soup at 6 that morning. A week after the confrontation at the horse paddock, I was startled by a gentle knock at my office door. So soft I almost missed it. Checking my newly installed security camera feed, I saw Carol Jenkins standing outside but not in her usual HOA attire. She wore an old coat and looked like she had been crying all night, her eyes red and puffy, shoulders hunched with the weight of what she was about to do. Alex, I need to talk to you urgently. Olive just did something terrible. I cannot stay silent anymore, she said. The moment I opened the door, her voice shaking with emotion, I invited her in and made strong Colombian coffee, the kind that could wake the dead and give courage to the living. She sat down, hands trembling so badly around the coffee mug that I worried she might drop it. Last night, Olive called an emergency meeting at 10 p.m. She said it was urgent HOA business that could not wait. But Alex, only 3 people showed up. Her, me, and Harold Peterson. Our bylaws clearly state we need a quorum of 7 board members for any official decisions. She did not care. Carol pulled out her smartphone with shaking hands. I am retiring next month after 40 years as an accountant. I have never done anything dishonest in my entire career, but Olive, my daughter, is a lawyer in Dallas. She told me that if I ever witnessed illegal activity, I needed to collect evidence. So I recorded the meeting. She showed me a document she had kept, and my hands actually shook with anger as I read what Olive had tried to push through in Hersham meeting. The resolution was beyond insane, reading like something from a dictator's playbook. Emergency Resolution 2024-15. The Baxter Ranch must construct a 4 concrete wall around the entire property within 7 days. All livestock activities are banned after 6 p.m. Outstanding violation fines of $8,000 are due immediately. The HOA demands full access rights to inspect for violations at any time without notice. Non-compliance will result in fines of $2,500 per day and immediate legal action. Signed by Margaret Williams, President Carol Jenkins, Harold Peterson, Janet Miller, Robert Kim, and Sandra Davis. I looked up at Carol, frowning at the signatures. But Carol, there are enough signatures here for a quorum. How is this illegal? Carol's face went pale as she explained the depth of Olive's deception. Janet, Robert, and Sandra were not even there. They were never called, never notified. Olive forced me to forge their signatures. She had sample signatures from their membership applications and made me copy them. My mind reeled at the audacity, but Carol was not done. Alex, I need you to hear this recording. You need to understand what kind of person we are dealing with. She played the audio file. The quality crystal clear thanks to modern smartphone technology. Olive's voice filled my office, dripping with venom and entitlement. I do not care if we have enough people. Baxter refused my generous offer. Now he pays the price, Harold's nervous voice interjected. But Olive, this is not legal. We cannot just legal. I am the law in this HOA. Carol write in the minutes that all 7 members were present. The recording continued with Carol's barely audible whisper. But Mrs. Williams, I cannot. Do you want to lose your job? Remember, I know about your credit card debt. It would be such a shame if everyone in the neighborhood found out the HOA secretary is drowning in debt. Now write what I tell you. There was a long pause. Then Carol's defeated whisper. I will write it. Olive's triumphant voice continued. Good girl. Now forge the signatures of the absent members. I have their signature samples from the membership forms. Make it look authentic. The recording ended and we sat in heavy silence. Carol looked at me with tears in her eyes. I am not proud of what I did, Alex, but I was scared. She knows things about everyone, uses them like weapons. The very next morning at 5 a.m., Jake called me in a panic. Boss, emergency. The whole ranch, you need to get here right now. When I arrived, the sight that greeted me was like something from a horror movie. Giant red violation notices were plastered everywhere. On the ranch gate, along the fencing, on the barn walls, even on my truck. They looked like crime scene tape, but worse, declaring my property as some kind of violator's paradise. Jake was fuming as he showed me his phone. They came at 4 in the morning. I saw it all on the cameras. 5 people led by Olive. They took pictures, and boss, you need to see what they posted online. The Sunset Hills HOA page was flooded with photos of my ranch, each with inflammatory captions. Violator Baxter refuses to comply. This dangerous ranch threatens our community's safety and property values. Action will be taken to protect our family. But the worst was yet to come. That afternoon, while reviewing security footage from the past few days, I discovered something that made my blood boil. The timestamp read 2 a.m. 3 nights earlier. The infrared camera shad captured everything in stunning clarity. Olive and 2 men in black hoodies had snuck onto my property through the back fence. They made their way to the area in front of the horse barn, where Olive looked around carefully to ensure no one was watching. Then, in what would have been comical if it were not so malicious, she carefully lowered herself to the damp ground. For the next 15 minutes, she put on an Oscar-worthy performance, writhing and moaning in fake agony. Ow, my back. This unsafe ranch. No proper lighting. I am injured. The 2 men took photos from multiple angles. Olive clutching her back, her face contorted in fake pain. One shot even showed her throwing dirt on herself to look more authentic. Then at 2:31 a.m., Olive stood up normally, brushed off the dirt, and actually high-fived her accomplices. They laughed, laughing, completely unaware that every second had been captured in high definition. Jake watched the video with his mouth hanging open. Boss, she's setting you up for a fake injury lawsuit. Worse than that, Jake, I replied grimly. She is building a cassetto. Either force me to sell the land or face a massive lawsuit that could bankrupt me. This is a coordinated attack. Without hesitation, I called Robert Smith, a 35-year-old lawyer from Dallas who specialized in property law and HOA disputes. After reviewing the video evidence and Carl's recording, he was almost speechless. Alex, this goes so far beyond normal HOA overreach. This is criminal fraud, harassment, trespassing, conspiracy, forgery. We are not just going to defend against this. We are going to destroy them in court. That afternoon, exactly as Robert Smith predicted, Olive escalated to a level of insanity I could not have imagined. At 4:30 p.m., while I was in another client meeting, those familiar sirens wailed again. Olive had called 911 for the second time, but this call was even more outrageous than the first. Emergency. I was injured at the dangerous Baxter Ranch 3 days ago. The owner refuses to let me onto the property to gather evidence. He is destroying proof of my injuries. I'm afraid he is armed and dangerous. Please send backup immediately. This time, when the police arrived, I was ready with everything. Videos, recordings, documents. The war was about to reach its climax, and Olive had no idea what was coming for her. Carol just texted me. I cannot take it anymore. I am going to testify everything. I have all the original documents, even something about the land you do not know. But the real bombshell, I had not told anyone about what I actually owned, not even my lawyer. Type what if you are ready for the biggest plot twist in HOA history. 2 weeks after that second 911 call, the preliminary hearing arrived like D-Day at the county courthouse. The courtroom was packed to capacity. Apparently, HOA drama drew crowds better than reality TV shows. Olive entered wearing a severe black suit that aged her 10 years. All traces of her usual arrogance replaced by barely concealed panic. Her eyes shot daggers at Carol, who sat beside me with a briefcase full of damning evidence. I sat with Robert Smith, calm and prepared for war, while behind us in the public gallery, Frank Davies and Dorothy Miller joined dozens of Sunset Hills residents who had come to witness the showdown. The whispers and murmurs created a constant buzz of anticipation that filled the room. Judge Williams, a no-nonsense woman in her mid-50s with a reputation for seeing through bull, entered the courtroom. Everyone rose respectfully. "Be seated," she commanded with authority. "We are here for the preliminary hearing in the matter of Baxter versus Williams and the Sunset Hills HOA. Counsel, you may begin." Robert Smith stood up like a gladiator entering the arena, radiating confidence. "Your Honor, we would like to begin by establishing a clear pattern of harassment. The defendant has called 911 twice with false accusations against my client. May I play the recordings for the court?" The first call echoed through the courtroom speakers, Olive's shrill voice filling the space. "There's a trespasser occupying the HOA ranch office. He is refusing to leave. He might be armed." Snickers rippled through the gallery before Judge Williams restored order with her gavel. The second call was even more dramatic, with Olive's voice rising to near hysteria. "I was injured. Baxter destroyed evidence. He is dangerous. Send a SWAT team if necessary." Someone in the gallery could not contain themselves, muttering loudly enough for all to hear. "A SWAT team for a horse ranch? Is she insane?" Judge Williams banged her gavel, but I caught the ghost of a smile on her face. Robert continued smoothly. "Now, Your Honor, I would like to present video evidence from my client's security system recorded on the night of the 15th. The large courtroom monitor flickered to life, displaying crystal-clear high-definition footage with night vision, so sharp you could count the buttons on Olive's coat. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as Olive checked carefully for cameras, not knowing about the hidden one. They watched her lower herself gingerly to the ground like a bad stunt double. They heard her theatrical moans while absolutely no one was around. The silence in the courtroom was deafening when the video ended. Judge Williams leaned forward, her eyebrows nearly reaching her hairline. "Miss Williams, would you care to explain this behavior?" Olive shot to her feet, her face flushed crimson. "That is not what it looks like. I really did slip and fall. That video has been edited, deep-faked, AI-generated." Judge Williams' voice was dry as desert sand in 4K resolution with timestamp authentication from a security system. "I think not. Sit down, Miss Williams." Carol's testimony came next, and for the first time in 6 months, she showed no fear. Taking the witness stand, she placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Her voice was clear and strong as she began. "I am Carol Jenkins, and until recently, I was the secretary of the Sunset Hills HOA. I'm here to testify about what I witnessed and what I was forced to do." Robert guided her through the testimony expertly. "Mrs. Jenkins, please tell the court about the meeting on the night of the 14th. Carol took a deep breath before continuing. Olive called an emergency meeting at 10 p.m. Only 3 of 7 board members attended. This did not meet our quorum requirement. Despite this, Olive forced me to falsify the meeting minutes and forge the signatures of the 4 absent board members. She produced the original documents from her briefcase. Here are the actual minutes with the forged signatures. Any handwriting expert can verify they are all written by the same person, me, under duress. The audio recording played next. Each word another nail in Olive's coffin. But Carol was not finished. "There is more, Your Honor. Over the past 6 months, the HOA has recorded $10,000 in administrative costs. However, the actual receipts I filed only account for $2,000. The remaining $8,000 were transferred to personal accounts belonging to Olive Williams. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for." Robert Smith stood up, savoring the anticipation. "Your Honor, now we would like to clarify the fundamental issue at the heart of this case. Miss Williams claims authority over my client's ranch, but the truth is far different." I stood up carrying a leather portfolio containing documents that would change everything. "Your Honor, when I purchased my ranch in 2019, I did not just buy the buildings and paddocks you can see today. I purchased the entire parcel from the Henderson family, all 1.5 acres of it. including the 2,000 square meter strip of land that the Sunset Hills HOA has been claiming as abandoned public property. The same land where Miss Williams announced plans to build a community center, the same land for which she has been collecting donations from residents. The courtroom exploded. Olive shot up like she had been electrocuted. "No, that is impossible. That is our land." Robert calmly presented the deed and title documents to the judge. "Your Honor, these legal documents from the county recorder clearly show that Mr. Baxter has owned this entire parcel, including the disputed area, since 2019. The gallery erupted in chaos. Dorothy Miller called out. "Olive told us that was going to be HOA property." Frank Davies added, "She collected donations. I gave $500. Judge Williams studied the documents carefully. "These documents are absolutely clear and legally binding. Mr. Baxter owns the entire parcel." I looked directly at Olive and delivered my prepared line. "Your Honor, I do not just own the ranch office. I own the land she has been standing on every time she trespassed. I own the land she promised to HOA members. She has been selling dreams about property that was never hers." Judge Williams delivered her preliminary ruling with authority. Based on the evidence presented, Miss Williams has clearly engaged in harassment, misuse of emergency services, and fraud. Mr. Baxter's property rights are absolute. Miss Williams, you are ordered to stay 500 ft away from Baxter Ranch. Full trial in 2 weeks. She paused dramatically. "The district attorney's office will review this evidence for potential criminal charges, including fraud and embezzlement." The gavel came down with finality, sealing Olive's fate. She sat there white as a sheet, finally understanding that her reign of terror was over. But she had one more desperate move to make. The judge's next words changed everything. "The district attorney's office will review evidence for criminal charges, including fraud and embezzlement." Olive had just made her final fatal mistake, and this time it was not just about money or property. What do you think she did? Wrong answers only in the comments, because the truth is darker than fiction. The emergency HOA meeting convened that very evening at 6 p.m. in the Sunset Hills Community Center, and the atmosphere was electric with barely contained rage. Frank Davies wasted no time taking charge of the situation, standing at the podium with righteous anger. The room was packed with 80 residents, nearly the entire HOA membership, all buzzing with indignation after witnessing the courtroom revelation. "Friends and neighbors," Frank began, his voice carrying the weight of betrayal, "today we witness shocking truths about the person we elected to lead our community. Margaret Williams lied about property rights, forged official documents, stole from our funds, and staged a fake injury to sue our neighbor. She has disgraced this office and betrayed every single one of us." The room erupted in angry shouts and calls for immediate action. "I make a motion to immediately remove Margaret Williams from the position of HOA president," Frank declared above the noise. Seconded came the chorus of at least 20 voices in unison. Dorothy Miller stood up, her elderly frame shaking with indignation. "I donated $500 for that community center on land that Alex Baxter actually owns. I want my money back immediately." How many others gave money for this phantom project? Hands shot up around the room as residents realized the scope of Olive's deception. Just then, the meeting room doors burst open with dramatic force. Olive stormed in looking like she had been through a hurricane, mascara streaking down her face in black rivers, her usually perfect hair now resembling a bird's nest. The smell of alcohol preceded her. "You traitors, every last one of you, I am your president, your democratically elected president." Frank remained calm but firm in his response. "We're Olive, past tense. We are voting you out right now." Even Harold Peterson, who had been part of Olive's inner circle, stood up to face her. "Olive, enough is enough. I was wrong to support you. You have gone too far." This betrayal from her last ally seemed to break something in Olive. At 2, "Harold, you spineless worm. Fine, but remember, I know secrets about all of you." Frank called for order and proceeded with the vote. All in favor of removing Margaret Williams from the position of HOA president. Raise your hand. 79 hands shot up immediately. Only one remained down. Olive's own. Motion carried unanimously, Frank announced. "Olive, you are no longer president. Please surrender all HOA property immediately." Olive laughed maniacally. "Never, I would rather burn it all to the ground." The security guards had top-physically escort her from the building as she screamed threats. At 3 a.m. 2 nights later, my phone rang with Jake's panicked voice. "Boss, fire. The feed storage building is on fire. I raced to the ranch to find smoke billowing from the storage building, but miraculously, the automatic sprinkler system had activated just in time. The fire department was already on scene, and the damage was minimal. Fire Chief Johnson examined the scene with his trained eye. "Mr. Baxter, this was definitely arson. Clear accelerant patterns. May I see your security footage?" Once again, my 16 cameras had captured everything in stunning clarity. The footage showed Olive at 2:47 a.m., parking down the road. At 2:58, she approached carrying a gas can. At 3:03, she began pouring gasoline around the building. At 3:04, she fumbled with matches. Then at 3:05, the sprinkler system burst to life, drenching Olive completely. The best part came when she ran away, slipping in mud and dropping her driver's license. Chief Johnson shook his head in amazement. "In 30 years, I have never seen a dumber criminal. She literally left her ID at the crime scene." By 7 a.m., police cars surrounded Olive's house. Half the neighborhood watched as she emerged in a pink bathrobe, being led away in handcuffs while shouting about conspiracies. "This is a setup. Baxter framed me. I am the victim." As the police car drove away, spontaneous applause broke out among the watching neighbors. 2 weeks later came the criminal trial. Olive looked defeated in her orange jumpsuit. All arrogance gone. The charges were extensive: harassment, false 911 calls, fraud, attempted arson, embezzlement of $8,000, forgery, and criminal trespass. All guilty verdicts. Judge Williams showed no mercy during sentencing. "Margaret Williams, your pattern of behavior demonstrates complete disregard for law and property rights. This court sentences you to 18 months in county jail, $30,000 restitution to Mr. Baxter, $8,000 to the HOA, $5,000 to donation victims, 200 hours community service, lifetime ban from any HOA positions, and mandatory anger management." Olive broke down sobbing. But karma was not finished. To pay all fines, she had to sell her house. In perfect irony, I bought it $20,000 below asking price. She had no choice but to accept. On moving day, seeing me supervise renovations, she screamed, "Enjoy my house, you monster." I replied calmly, "I will. It will make a perfect guest house." 6 months later, Olive was released early for community service. Highway cleanup directly in front of my ranch. Every Saturday at 7 a.m., there she was in orange vest picking up trash. Jake could not resist commenting when driving by. "Morning, Madam Former President. Beautiful day for community service." Carol, now my property manager, would bring her water. "Stay hydrated, Olive. Would not want you passing out." The kindness seemed to hurt more than the insults. Frank Davies visited about the $12,000 in the community center donations. "Keep it for real improvements," I told him. "Just do not promise land you do not own." He shook my hand gratefully. "You are bigger than most, Alex." But the story had one more chapter, one final transformation of that disputed land. 6 months later, I bought something that made this whole story come full circle. It used to be Olive's most prized possession, her house, which is now my guest house. But can you guess what I did with that 2,000 square meter land she desperately wanted? First correct answer gets pinned. Here is a hint. She cried actual tears when she saw what I built there. 1 year later, spring returned to Baxter Ranch with renewed vitality and purpose. With the $30,000 in restitution from Olive, plus profits from my expanding agricultural consulting business, I had transformed the entire property into something beyond my original dreams. The storage building that Olive tried to burn down was rebuilt as a state-of-the-art facility, with climate control and automated inventory systems. I added 10 new horse stalls and launched a therapeutic riding program for children with disabilities. The guest house, formerly Olive's pride and joy, now hosted weekend clinics and workshops for aspiring ranchers. But the crown jewel of the transformation was what I did with that disputed 2,000 square meter plot of land. Where Olive had envisioned her monument to power and control, I built something that represented the exact opposite: Freedom Park, a community treasure open to all. This wasn't just any ordinary park, but a therapeutic recreation area designed with purpose and love. It featured a playground specially designed for children with disabilities with wheelchair-accessible equipment and sensory play areas. A beautiful sensory garden provided a calm space for autism therapy, filled with lavender, mint, and other aromatic plants. Picnic areas with shade structures offered free gathering spaces for families and community groups. A walking trail connected the park to the neighborhood, encouraging exercise and connection. But the centerpiece was something that would ensure Olive's story would never be forgotten: In the center of the park stood a magnificent bronze plaque 3 feet by 4 feet that told the story without mentioning names. Freedom Park, where greed tried to take root, generosity blooms. Where lies were told, truth prevails. Where one tried to divide, community unites. This land was coveted through deception, now given freely in celebration of justice, integrity, and neighboring neighbor. Donated to Sunset Hills Community by Baxter Ranch 2025. The best revenge is a life well lived and a community well served. A smaller plaque below read simply, "Special thanks to Carol Jenkins, whistleblower with conscience." The message was clear. This land that had been the source of so much conflict was now a symbol of what communities could achieve when they stood together against tyranny. The grand opening ceremony drew over 200 people, including many who had played key roles in defeating Olive's reign of terror. Frank Davies gave a moving speech about the importance of transparency and leadership. Dorothy Miller organized a bake sale that raised funds for the park's maintenance. Carol Jenkins stood beside me, tears of joy replacing the tears of fear she'd shed a year ago. I deliberately didn't mention Olive in my dedication speech. There was no need. Everyone knew the story, and the park itself was testament enough. But hidden in the crowd, wearing sunglasses and a hoodie despite the warm weather, was Olive herself. Fresh from jail and required to complete her community service, she had come to witness what her greed had ultimately created. When I announced that the land would forever remain a free community space, legally protected from any future development through an ironclad conservation easement, something broke in Olive. She began crying. Not the angry, frustrated tears of a tyrant denied, but the genuine tears of someone finally understanding what they had lost. She had been so focused on power and control that she'd missed the opportunity to be part of something beautiful. She slipped away before anyone noticed her. But I had seen her there, and I hoped maybe, just maybe, she had learned something. Carol had certainly transformed through this experience. She now ran our therapeutic writing program with passion and skill, using experience gained from raising a special needs granddaughter. "Alex, you gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve one," she told me one day. "Now I get to give that same chance to others." She had established the Second Chances Fund to help people in difficult situations get back on their feet. The first beneficiary was Harold Peterson, who had lost his job after the Olive scandal, but was now working as SOAR maintenance supervisor. "Everyone deserves redemption," Carol would say. "I got mine and I'll pay it forward forever." The new HOA under Frank's leadership had become a model of transparency and accountability. Monthly financial reports were posted online for all to see. All meetings were recorded and live-reamed for those who couldn't attend. Term limits ensured no one could build a personal theft again. And most importantly, clear boundaries were established regarding the HOA's actual authority. "Alex taught us a valuable lesson," Frank announced at one meeting. "Respect for property rights is the foundation of being good neighbors. We exist to serve the community, not rule it." When the question of Baxter Ranch's HOA membership came up, the vote was unanimous. Forever empty from HOA jurisdiction with a formal apology for past overreach. But nothing in this entire saga became as famous as the sign I erected at the ranch entrance. 12 feet wide and 8 ft tall, illuminated 24 hours a day, it had become something of a tourist attraction. Baxter Ranch established 2019. This is a free zone where horses run free, and so do we. Everyone welcome except those who call 911 on owners. Lifetime ban, list 1. Margaret Williams, HOA President 2024, crimes, false 911 calls, fraud, arson, being a Karen. If you're reading this, Olive, hey, doesn't smell that bad. The sign went viral on social media with people driving from neighboring towns just to take selfies with it. The HO free zone trended nationally, and I received messages from people all over the country sharing their own HOA horror stories. One afternoon, while I was teaching a writing lesson to a group of special needs children, Carol waved me over with an envelope. "Someone left this at the gate for you. No name, but I think I know who it's from." Inside was a handwritten letter in familiar script. "Alex, I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I need to say this. You were right about everything. Greed blinded me. Power corrupted me. Jail humbled me. Seeing Freedom Park, seeing the community thriving, this is what I could have helped build if I hadn't been consumed with control. I'm moving to Puerto Rico to live with my sister. Starting over, no HOAs. Thank you for showing me the cost of hate and the value of great. That MP smell really doesn't smell bad. I was wrong about that too. I folded the letter with mixed emotions and showed it to Carol. Maybe people can change after all, she said softly. Maybe I agreed, but the sign stays up. Some lessons need permanent reminders. The monthly community BBQ at the ranch had become a beloved tradition. Frank manned the grill. Dorothy's potato salad achieved legendary status. Children took free pony rides, and adults shared stories that often began with, "Remember when Olive?" One newcomer asked about this infamous Olive person, who featured in so many stories. Little Bobby, now 8 years old and wise beyond his years, provided the perfect summary. She wanted to take things that weren't hers, but Mr. Alex taught her about sharing, as the sun set on another community gathering. I often sat on the hill overlooking Freedom Park, watching families enjoy the space that had caused so much conflict. Carol would sometimes join me with 2 cups of tea, asking her a perpetual question. No regrets? None, I'd answer honestly. Every battle teaches us something. This one taught me that true power isn't about controlling others. It's about empowering your community, and forgiveness, she'd probe gently. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, I'd remind her. That's why the sign stays. Freedom requires eternal vigilance, and humor helps the medicine go down. I saddled up Midnight, the beautiful quarter horse I'd rescued the previous year, for an evening ride around the property, past the guest house that had once been Olive's castle, through Freedom Park, where children's laughter echoed in the evening air, along the boundary with the HOA neighborhood where I'd waved to Frank and Dorothy and other friends, and always past that legendary sign, still shining bright in the gathering dusk. My phone buzzed with a video message from a fellow ranch owner in Florida. "Bro, you won't believe this. The crazy HOA president here just called the cops about my pet duck. Claims it violates the waterfowl ordinance. Can you help?" I laughed, turning Midnight toward home. It seemed Olive's spiritual successor had appeared, and the cycle of HOA madness continued. But wait, remember that HOA president who called the cops about a duck? That's my next story, and it's even crazier than Olive. This president didn't just call 911. They called FBI, CIA, and animal control about a duck named Gerald. Smash subscribe if you want to hear how I helped a Florida ranch owner expose an HOA president who claimed ducks were communist infiltrators. And comment your city if your HOA needs to be exposed next. Because folks, the Olive story, that's just beginner level in the HOA Crazy Olympics.